So we will start with the branch. What branch were you in? Or did you enlist? Were you drafted? And what year was that you went into the military? We can start back to the back.
I was in the Army. I was drafted. I went in on May 8th, 1963.
I was drafted into the Army in 1965.
I volunteered for draft February of 1967. Army. I always forget that.
Air Force, I went through ROTC, so I got commissioned in December of '93. Had to wait like 7 months before I could actually go on active duty.
Army enlisted September 1985.
I enlisted in the Army in July of 1982.
I went in the Air Force, June of 1955.
Enlisted in the Navy, October 29th, 2003.
Commissioned in the Air Force in May 1993.
I enlisted in the Air Force December 11th, 1968.
I enlisted in the Navy June 10th, 1951.
Okay. The next thing we want to talk about is what was basic training like for you? Where did you go, and what was your experience in basic?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, May, June, and July 1963. It was very hot and humid, and not a very pleasant experience as far as mainly because of the humidity and heat and everything.
I was at Fort Leonard Wood, got there middle of December of '65, and I think it was probably the coldest weather they ever had down there. It was terrible. Anyway, it was kind of rough.
February, about 15th February of '67, went to basic at Fort Bliss, Texas for 3 months. Basically, everywhere we went was in formation, 4 abreast. I was on the right side. We'd all have our M14s. The guy beside me and the guy on the far side, we could all do it fine, but we had a guy next to him come out of Kentucky. And he was not in shape. So them 2 guys handed me his rifle, and I carried 2 rifles, and they hooked an arm around him, both of them, and we got him through basic training. And he literally came to me one evening and with a letter, says, "Can you read me my letter?" What? He says, "I can't read." So here's out of the mountains, he was uneducated. So I read his letter, and later he come back, he says, "Would you write a letter for me to mail home?" So we did. Now he made it clear through basic training, and then they gave him an honorable discharge. Once they figured out he really could do it.
Because I went through ROTC, I didn't have the traditional basic training that most of these guys have. But I had a 4-week equivalent of basic training at Lackland Air Force Base, Texas, July of 1991. The SAT sheets were always rubbing, so that kind of no, the most interesting thing that happened during that time was we had to do drills where you had to practice commands, left, right, forward, the stuff. They had someone called the guidon bearer, which was like a 8-foot pole with their flag on it, not the U.S. flag, but your squadron flag, whatever. It had a little point on the end. Well, I was giving the commands, and the guy had it out like this, and he was supposed to bring it up. Well, he brought it up so fast it flew over his head, and I almost got impaled by it. So somehow that was my fault too, by the way. So that was interesting.
I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training, and we got almost clear through basic, and the senior drill sergeant called 3 of us into his office and had us do push-ups, and he said we weren't doing the push-ups well enough for him, and he sent us back to the very beginning of basic training. All 3 of us were going into medical corps, so Whether it was our push-ups or whatever, who knows, but, we thought it was the end of the world to have to repeat it all again. And, I guess my biggest memory is that Thanksgiving came and they marched us into the mess hall, and here's this nice big turkey and pie and everything. And they went and ate the turkey and gave us dehydrated meals ready to eat for our Thanksgiving meal.
Kind of like Mr. Springer, I went to Fort Leonard Wood, July, August, and September. And when I got to Fort Leonard Wood at 10 o'clock at night, it was still like 96 degrees or something. And we didn't sleep for like 26 hours from the time we went into the map station to enlist until they got us through processing at Fort Leonard Wood. But the most memorable part of Fort Leonard Wood for me was about halfway through, we did our basic training and AIT at the same time, 13 weeks. And the drill sergeant comes up and asks me my name, because you've been kind of skating by, since you're gonna mess up. Okay? Says, you wanna know why you're gonna mess up? Okay? He says, because of power suggestion. The very next day, I forgot my weapons card. And our arms room was like, oh, probably between a quarter and a half mile from our barracks. He says, you have 6 minutes to get up there and find your weapons card and get back. And I got back in 4, and he says, I said 3. So then I had to give him 300 mountain climbers through that week. Every time they dismissed formation, I would have to find him and do some mountain climbers. But I made it through.
Graduated and went through enlistment in Louisville, Kentucky. And then from there, we took a train to Sampson, New York, Air Force Base, New York. It's Geneva. And the 4 of us that were put together, they got stationed in one flight, and I got by myself in another flight. Didn't know anybody whatsoever, and security, I don't know what. And I made it through. It was good weather up there, and even the bivouac wasn't even that bad. It was nice, the 4 or 5 days we had. And I think our squad won the marching contest there. Yep.
So I'm from Arizona, where I grew up. And I went to boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois. It's right by Chicago, end of October. Mine, not being super smart, showed up in shorts and a tank top. So I get off the bus from the airport, and then they all made me just stand there in the cold, freezing my you-know-what off. Oh, that was a good time, But I was A-Rock in my division, which means I sang cadence. I was a singer. And I did get in trouble one time at boot camp because me and this girl that I made a friend with, we did what they called a Ricky Ninja. And we put our ski masks on and we call them our Smurfs. They're like dark blue, slacks. And in the middle of the night, we would go under people's racks, their bunk beds, and just like lay under it and start shaking it really bad and scaring the you-know-what out of them. It was fun. I got in trouble. I still made it through. I didn't get sent back. I just got fired from my job 2 weeks before graduation, which kind of stunk, but whatever. So, yeah, I froze and played fake Navy for a while. Actually, I went through school and went to fleet. Yes.
Went to a 4-week summer camp at Lowry, south side of Colorado in 1990. And all I can remember is that it was so hot, the shoe polish melted off my shoes while we were on the parade ground.
Okay, I went to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, and of course that was my first plane ride I ever rode on. I know some of you got probably maybe your first ride coming up, but my first ride, and of course it was a good ride down. We had a nice steak going down there, all of us. We got there about 2 o'clock in the morning. Lackland Air Force Base guy was waiting for us, and of course we had to. That's when it all started. We were put down to all the same level, you know. We were, then we went over to Lackland Air Force Base, and we took us right to chow and ate good. And of course the TI was right there in front of us, and just like Bruce said, they kept us busy. Oh, I think it was the worst day of my life. I mean, they just kept you around like cattle, you know, one spot to another spot to another spot. They loved it when they cut your hair off. And but I went in with I was a farm kid, so I already had a butch haircut, so that was fine. I didn't care. They couldn't do that to me because I already had my hair off. Then they, of course, they went from one thing. They threw their clothes at you, they threw their boots at you, and so on that night I was so tired. And then we got up. We went. I think we finally got down at 9 o'clock at night, and then of course, yeah, I could always remember when you wake up in the morning, you were in two bunk, lower bunk and upper bunk, and they turned the old light on at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you had to get out, you know, and get ready for chow, whatever. And so it's quite a few, you know, good memories. But not very many good memories the first 6 weeks. I was there 6 weeks, but after basic training, the Air Force is just like a job. So you kind of want to put everybody at the same level. So I got what I remember about basic training. But I get along okay. Go ahead.
I took basic training in San Diego, middle of the summer. Weather was great, even though it did get warm on occasion. And we did a number of things, including classroom instruction and marching drills and all that kind of stuff. But one of our great delights down there was if we'd be out on a drill, we'd be allowed to take a break. We could lay underneath the shade of the palm trees and look out across this strip of water that's probably a quarter of a mile long or wide. I mean, there's a Marine base across there. These Marines are out there, not a lot of them, but several of them, digging holes in the sand, running down to the water with their helmet, running back, trying to fill this hole in the sand with the water. I don't know what they did. I don't know what they did wrong, but I'll tell you, it must have been pure hell to go through.
Brett, did you have anything else to add about any memories from basics?
I could add one thing. I was inducted in Omaha. We took a train to Kansas City and an all-night train ride across to St. Louis and back to some little town in central Missouri there, and a bus picked us up and took us to Fort Leonard Wood. We got there, a big old sergeant got on, and he said, okay, everybody off the bus. So we got on. Wasn't fast enough. We got all back on, off again a little faster, and I still wasn't fast enough. The third time, we got off in a hurry.
Everybody get a bunch of shots right off the bat.
Right, shots
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, shots right off.
Both arms at the same
Both arms at the same
time.
time.
Did anybody pass out when they got their shots?
No.
We were in a line. You know, they got the shots, and then we got the peanut butter shot, the penicillin shot. They separate the boys and girls, and, you know, backside out, bend over. That was my 19th birthday. Wonderful.
Being inducted, you go to Omaha for your physical, you see if you can pass your physical
Yeah.
to be drafted or whatever.
Yeah.
Enlisted. And when they got all done, not gonna tell you what all the details, but,
Okay, thanks.
we was all lined up, and he says, now count off, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So all of us did that. We got all done. He said, all the ones go over here, 2s and 3s over here. He looked over here and said, 1's your Army, 2s and 3s your Marines. And that's how I ended up in the Army. Luck of the draw.
Remember, the only part of basic training that we ever had where was air conditioning was the chow hall. We could not wait to go eat.
Food was good.
I was freezing most of the time.
Yeah.
Jeez. They even had the windows open in our little barracks area. And then whenever we got in trouble and they IT'd us,
Yeah.
you know, intensive training, they'd be like, oh, we have to make it rain. So, you know, all of us are in there like doing 8 counts and push-ups and all that stuff until like the moisture was built up and like, yeah, whole lot of no thanks.
You didn't
No.
And none of you in sports know what push-ups are until you've been in the service.
Right.
They know what push-ups are.
Can you do one for us, Terry?
No, no. Not anymore.
I cigarettes just to have a cigarette.
And everybody, yeah, right. But policing up was picking up cigarettes. And even if you didn't smoke, you'd pick up other people's cigarettes all the time.
I always volunteered to clean the smoke deck, then I got to smoke while I was cleaning, and everybody else didn't.
And you didn't wanna, you know, have the TIs know your name. You try to just stay in the background, cause they know your name, they pick on you.
And when you were Brzezinski and things like that, they never yelled at you.
Yeah,
When you
yeah,
were
yeah.
hot, yeah, you had all kinds of
And
deals.
when he was marching, they'd always pick for the guys that pop up. They always, you know, they wanted you to march level. They didn't want anybody got going up like this, and they pick on you then.
And the bouncer in the crowd.
What was the food like? Like in the hall, and when you said that was your favorite time because it was air conditioned, but
My biggest problem was I was a really slow eater. And after about 2 weeks, I would drop out of
Yeah.
the PT run in the morning because I just,
Well.
you know, I had a really high metabolism, but I didn't get enough food. So I would get sick. And so my drill sergeant says, we're gonna start putting you at the front of the line every day. So I had more time to eat. The people that got in at the end, by the time they got in, we only had like maybe 4 minutes left.
Right. You had
Because
to
the
eat.
whole unit went in, you stand in line to get your food, and then when it was time to go, everybody got up and left.
We had to eat with one hand too, and one hand down, one hand. And when it was time to get up, you got up, whether you had done or not.
Yeah. So then they told me,
And
we
no
need to start
talking.
putting an apple pie or something, we had these little Hostess apple pies and
Mhm.
blueberry pies, put one in your pocket, you know, so you got something in the morning. We go out and run 3-4 miles before breakfast.
what everyone else? Food that you had, MREs,
C rations.
anything, or C rations?
C rations, you got a little can that had pound cake in it. So if you were gonna eat it, you had to make sure that you ate it in small bites and drink a little bit of water. You never wanted to eat the whole thing and then drink a bunch of water, cause it would just swell up in your stomach.
Everything come in cans, you
Yeah.
had your
Right.
P38, P38.
No open can. We used to
Got pretty good.
strap the cans of meat to the manifold on our deuce and a half to heat it while we were traveling, and then when we stopped, it would be hot. Sometimes it'd blow up, sometimes it didn't.
So what was your, if you had a favorite meal, MRE, what was the best one? Or what was the worst one?
Anything with the pork fritter.
Breakfast was best, I liked the breakfast
Yeah.
best. We have always had
Ham
bacon,
and eggs in
eggs,
the
and
can.
bacon, and pancakes, good. Air Force had good food. Over Vietnam, we had the best food on basic course, Air Force, and the Army guys, they didn't have as good food as we did, so they'd always like to trade, you know, they'd trade stuff for we'd trade them for, well, another thing they didn't have good fatigues, they were always wearing out their fatigues over there, and of course, he was out in the boondocks, so and we had good fatigues, so they'd trade fatigues for maybe steaks. And we'd trade back and forth all the time, you know, the Army and Air Force, we trade. What they had, we didn't have, so.
Well, in the Navy, Wednesdays, the cooks made a special breakfast because they had an inspection coming up, that everything had to be cleaned up. Their special breakfast was beans and wieners.
Oh.
Actually, it wasn't that bad, but the first time.
You know,
Pretty tough.
see, I remember like a bunch of times when you're like running low, we were doing a bunch of working with steel, you know, all that good junk. But we'd have like crunchy rice for days on end, like overcooked, nasty, dry with like sauce that you saw 3 days ago, and it looks like they just added some water. And you might see like random chunks of stuff.
Sometimes being in the military is just one step from being in prison.
Well, the boxes, whenever we did unload, it always said not suitable for institutional use. I was like, well, that's fantastic. Makes me so happy.
We ran out of salsa once, it was terrible. No, we had good food, but I was, you know, being an officer, I wasn't in a chow home on active duty, but during field training, which is what we call the equivalent basic training, we had 4 minutes to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds experience. We never starved, but we weren't, you're always a little bit hungry, but it could have been a lot worse.
All I have to say, being I was a cook in the army, I never fed anybody bad food.
Matter of perspective.
We used to get steak, and it would be like this thin, and it would be like a hockey puck, like we'd literally throw it at each other. But whenever it was steak night, they would have, oh, you can get cake and ice cream, then we knew we would get it extended. Like all the Marines, like when I was on carrier, and when we had Marines there, they'd be like, oh, it's cake and ice cream, we're like, to censor myself, sorry, I still have the mouth of a sailor. Like, we'd be sitting there, we're like, ah, great. Next thing you know, CO gets on the 1MC, good evening, blah, 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 we're gonna be out here for another whatever, we're missing this port visit, not doing that, we're gonna be fighting, yeah.
Anybody have KP?
Yes, I did.
Peeled potatoes and peeled potatoes.
Oh, yeah.
Peeled potatoes
We
and
call it
clean
mess
rice
cranking.
pan.
Long day too.
Yep.
It was a long day.
Cooks never did that. I never had KP.
No.
Cooks were supervisors of cake.
I always had the other guys do, you guys go there. That's-
I think about once every 2 weeks our flight turned basic, but have to go
Oh.
pull a
Some
day of
of it I got.
KP.
What's KP?
Kitchen.
Kitchen.
Kitchen duty or kitchen.
Kitchen duty.
Kitchen
Kitchen
duty.
patrol.
Yeah.
Washing pots and
Washing
pans.
pots and pans and scrubbing the floor.
Sweeping the floor.
We called it mess cranking, but you would go there for
Peeled
like
potatoes,
3 to 6
whatever you
months.
had to peel, to get ready for peel.
Another thing that we did with basic training, you had to do what they call guard duty. So some nights you didn't get much sleep because you had at least couple hours of guard duty. They'd get you up and then you had to go out there and stand in front of your barracks. And then, of course, once in a while the officers or the TIs would come along and trick you, make sure you're awake. And boy, if you wasn't awake, boy, you were bad trouble. You were push-ups and stuff.
That's one thing, we always had to have one person walking the barracks all night.
Ruler.
Because somebody
Yeah.
could be sick.
We were right on the edge of the old barracks and the new barracks.
Mhm. Yeah.
And my squad, my platoon,
Yeah.
was the only ones in the old round, like Gomer Pile,
And Gomer Pile.
Quonset.
We had all those too. Yeah.
And the guard duty was not so much for keeping someone out, it was making sure there was no fire
Mhm.
and keep the
Mhm.
skunks out of the building. And we had like, I think 6 Quonsets with soldiers in them, and we had, 2 with latrines, and then 1 with storage.
Mhm.
And inevitably, at least once a week, you get a skunk in the bathroom. Yeah, the old concrete floors, come in 5:40 in the morning, trash can goes down the middle. When you got up, we didn't know what an alarm clock sounded like.
We got trash cans thrown down.
Yeah, that's, a light come on at 5 o'clock right above your head. Whoa, you were running. And one, they kept the bathroom spit and polished. You had one, you know, the men had one urinal to use and one's, you know, just toilet to use. The rest of them were inspection and clean. So then you made sure you probably got up in the middle of the night and did your personal business because you didn't have time in the morning to do this. Everything was spit and polished, and we kept that. Everything else is perfect.
Did you guys have to do the car wash showers?
Yeah.
Yeah. Y'all get in a line,
Yeah.
like, and they have the showers on, and like you just walk through. You just try to scrub as much as you can. And then being a female, you know,
Yeah.
I don't want like chia pets coming out of my armpits and stuff. So I'd be like, well, can I? No shame. Seriously, so I would just sneak in the middle of the night and shave my armpits.
We had to.
Oh man, the funk. It's horrible. No, and then people would get like foot fungus, so they would have foot spray days.
Or you always wore your flip flops in the shower.
Oh yeah, no, some people
Feet
didn't.
touching the
It
floor.
was nasty.
This getting back to the food.
Okay.
When I was in Germany, the first sergeant sent another fellow and I back into Mainz for, I don't remember what it was in the morning, so we ate at the mess hall there. Well, they were having liver for dinner that day, but everybody was complaining, and the cook says, well, we're having steak for supper. So we got our business done, went back out to wherever we work in, and went through the chow line, and guess what? they'd switched the menu out there. So we had liver again for supper that night. That didn't go over very well.
We had liver in basic too, and I did not like liver. But in basic training,
that's good.
the only thing you could stand to eat was liver. Literally.
Liver,
And,
that's good.
well,
Good.
it's gonna get so much, when we got the advanced training, first day out, they had liver, oh boy, and I took a bunch, and that was liver.
That was the things I didn't eat.
Not good. I don't know what they did in basic.
Wait for the next meal.
So after basic, what were some of the jobs that you had then? Did you specialize in something, or did you just, what did they have you do?
Well, I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. It's a field artillery post, and I was assigned to a Pershing missile unit. And we went through training on the Pershing missile. It was a mobile unit that could be moved from place to place, either by a track vehicle, or there was a air mode where they could put it in I don't remember what airplane it was, or even helicopter, and move it out to firing position. We had to know all the ins and outs of getting that done. And then after we had all that, then we went to Fort Wingate, New Mexico, and fired 4 missiles into White Sands, and then back to Fort Sill again, and then we loaded everything and went to Germany. That's where I was the rest of my time.
I stayed at Fort Leonard Wood for the for cook school, they call it. What did they call that?
AIT, it's advanced.
Yeah, your AIT, that's what I was going
Advanced
for.
initial training.
Anyway, that's what, I was there after basic for about 6 weeks. And then they sent me to Fort Story, Virginia, and that's where the 165th Transportation Company was being assembled. And I was with that outfit until I got out the next year.
Well, from basic, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and was assigned for the recon part of it. So, did a lot of training in that and stuff like that, and originally, I was scheduled to go to officers training school. And, we was out on bivouac there, and I had a couple of buck sergeants out of Vietnam, talking about what goes on, who does what, and who tells who to do what. And the more I thought about it, I decided I'd rather be the guy being told to go do it than tell a bunch of these kids to go and not come back. That was too much. And after that, since I turned that down, then they sent me to DC in a top clearance, some of you guys are familiar with, so you can get in Pentagon and Langley and all these places. Then they assigned me in motor pool, so there's basically nothing to do until they called and needed, well, you drove an ambulance, you might take a general someplace, or you might be moving snow or something one morning, or whatever, just kind of whatever job. So we drank a lot of coffee them days. And whatnot, but there's some stories that go on with a lot of that, but I'm not gonna go there. But I spent some time there, and then from there, then I was shipped over to Vietnam, and spent a year at base camp in the train. Can't remember the name of that base. All the bases had a name, and the name was the first GI killed at that location. That was what they called that base.
After college, my first duty assignment was at Hill Air Force Base in Utah. And I did engineering support for missile systems and external fuel tanks for a bunch of different things. And then I was at Offutt Air Force Base. I was in an intel squadron, but I wasn't an intel officer. I was doing route planning for missile crews. And I wasn't there super long because then that mission dried up. So then I actually went to UNL and taught ROTC there as an instructor for 3 years before I got out.
I went to San Antonio, Texas, to Fort Sam Houston for my medic school, and I was supposed to go on to physical therapy school, but they rescinded everyone's orders and sent our whole battalion to Germany for medical support. And I got lucky, I got into a treatment platoon, so I got to do a lot of neat things like suture head wounds and cast and stuff like that.
Because all the engineers that they were assigned to support in 3rd Armored Division were the idiots that went out and hurt themselves all the time.
And we all also would have duty guarding bus stops, guarding the bus that took American kids to school. There was a lot of terrorism going on over there, and there was a terrorist group known as the Red Army Faction, and they were pretty busy in Hannah where we were. And there was one time a friend of mine and I were guarding the bus stop downtown. We had our guns. They would never give us any bullets. We just had good guns. And we had a radio that halfway worked. And she came running around the corner, just wide as a sheet, and pulled me around the corner, and here in bright red spray paint was RAF written across the side of the building. And we were both scared to death, you know, and thinking, well, they're here somewhere. And we ended up having to go into a store and call the post to find out what to do, because we didn't have any radio that worked or any bullets to stop people. So there was times it could be kind of frightening, but.
I did my AIT, this is all one station unit training, so you had the same drill sergeants and everything from basic all the way through until you graduated. And as a combat engineer, we did explosives, like blew up bridges, laid minefields, blew abatis where you fall trees on the side of the road and create obstacles. The mission was kind of, you can't stop the enemy, so you have to create things to channel them where you can defeat them. So pretty much basic AIT was just one long hell. You know, if you did something wrong, you never got away from that drill sergeant. You just dealt with them the whole time. Once I got out, spent 2 years at Fort Ord, California. We were kind of like, we weren't attached to the Light Infantry Division, so we were just considered the post engineers. We took care of rappel towers and obstacle course, just general training facilities around the post. In almost 4 years in Hanau, West Germany. By then I was working as a supply clerk and armor, doing small arms repairs. I worked on all the M16s, M60 machine guns, 90mm recoilless rifles like the bazookas. Didn't really do anything as an engineer once I got to Germany. I stayed in the supply chain and stuff. I did a lot of, we were one of the forward units for when they called an alert. It's called the Fulda Gap. So during the Cold War, was where if Russia or East Germany was going to invade Germany, that's where they would come through. So we spent a lot of time out in the field. It was the 3rd Armored Division, so everything was in tanks and APCs. We had very few trucks and jeeps. It was all tracked vehicles.
Back to no bullets. While I was stationed in Arlington Hall, Virginia, there's a lot of the stuff going on too, big time here. Every month, if the motor pool mechanics needed parts, they change parts houses, so they spread the business around. And they'd call somebody down, you'd drive down, get your parts, come back, no big deal. Then 1 month come up and they called me down there to drive, and they issued me a M14 loaded rifle. And then they had another guy come along and issued him a .45 pistol loaded. Now he had a bad job. He had to go into that store to get the parts. And I was there to guard him while he went and did it. And this was in Washington, D.C. back in '67. It was not good. It was not good.
I went to tech school at Amarillo, Texas, and on 2-engine or more jet aircraft. I never turned a wrench in my life hardly until I got down there. And I learned. I enjoyed learning all about jet engines and mostly at aircraft. And we had some military stuff too, to learn history and everything at the same time. And I think it was about April, March. We left there at Amarillo to go to our next base, and it was Lincoln Air Force Base. And I was there for a while, and I'll tell that later.
So I was lucky enough to stay in Great Lakes, Illinois for my A school. I was a IT, information systems technician. They combined radio men and data processors, made IT. So I did satellite communications, I dealt with crypto, computer networking, all of that. My first duty station, I pre-commed a ship, so I'm a plank owner of a DDG. It was a USS Nitsa. My second ship, I decommed the USS Enterprise, CVN 75. While I was on board there, I was a system administrator of JWICS and, you know, the top secret SCI, which is Special Compartment Indicator. You're read into different programs. There's stuff I can't talk about ever. I worked with the SEALs a little bit, and I was on the Abraham Lincoln. And, like, we have collateral duties, so I did career counselor, you know, help people out and stuff. And I was the damage control petty officer. That was exciting. Got to fix a lot of stuff and got covered a cloud of asbestos once. That was exciting. Made me pretty angry. But yeah.
After I got out of college, I went to Vandenberg Air Force Base and got trained to be a ICBM launch operator. That was really nice for 3 months, and then they sent me to North Dakota in the middle of a blizzard. And I showed up with shorts and Birkenstocks on, completely unprepared. No, Grand Forks, North Dakota, not Minot. And I spent 4 years there. 4 years in Los Angeles after that on active duty, buying satellites and deploying satellite equipment around the world. And then I joined the reserves and have been in that for 18 years since then, as a lawyer.
Oh, okay, different jobs I had. Let's see, after basic training, I was assigned to a security place, so I was assigned to Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. Of course, it's super cold there.
Only in the winter.
Yeah, but it was, you know, they gave you clothes to wear, so it was okay.
It's winter most of the year there.
Yeah, we got there in April. Well, April 1969, they had the big flood. So one of my first jobs was directing traffic downtown Minot. They put a big dike up there too. Minot was about like here at that time. It was full of water. So that was one of my first jobs. And then after I got assigned to the missile program, so I helped went out with the missile guys, and missile crew chief, he had to open up a door, and he had a code, I had to code in order to get down below. So I did that in Minot, and then of course in Vietnam, after I was in Minot a year, I was in Vietnam a year in 1970 and to 71, one full year. And there I was assigned to Van Rang Air Force Base, and had different jobs there. I was on security, I was in towers for a little while. I was a night hawk guy when, you know, I was out there in the middle of the night. There was towers in the corners of the base, and he had a 50 caliber machine gun up there, and he just shot out every so often in the open, you know, in case somebody was gonna come through the wire. He just shot out there, and the guys in front of you were the security policemen with dogs, and they would be walking around in front of you too. And there wasn't anybody come through the year I was there. Was a little before I got there, somebody tried to come through, but not when I was there. But then I got assigned to, I was a carpenter. I went to tech school in Milford, so I had carpenter training, so I got on as a squadron carpenter. So I had a pretty good job the rest of that year in Van Rang. I'm a squadron carpenter. I put in air conditioners, and I did this and that, and repaired things. And along with that, of course, I did do some work outside the base. I put concertina wire up outside the base, and just things like that. And I drove a maintainer for a while, and never did that before, and I drove a deuce and a half truck for a while. So I did different jobs. And after Minot, I went to Offutt Air Force Base. And I was in the Armory for a year and a half there, and also did some. Not all I did there was good duty. So I had different jobs in the Air Force, but I really didn't learn a whole lot. But I did do some carpenter experience there to help me later on, which I did later on in life as carpenter work. So I guess that's about all I have.
Well, after boot camp, I went to damage control school for 16 weeks up at Treasure Island. which is located in San Francisco Bay. One of the more interesting parts of that school was 1 week of firefighting training. And they had a large building, and the inside of which was constructed to resemble a engine room on a ship or a boiler room on a ship. And what they would do, the last thing we had to do in that week class was they'd open up the door into this compartment, which had about this much fuel oil on the deck. And they had a raised platform where you could walk around. They'd throw something in there to start a fire. When it was raging, you went in, they closed the door behind you, you had to put the fire out. And we did it, you know, I mean, we had no choice.
We had to do something similar.
Huh?
We had to do something similar,
Yeah.
so.
And after that 16-week period, we were, the class was assigned to various ships. I signed up for a DMS, which is classified as as a destroyer that's been modified to be a minesweeper, classified as a high-speed minesweeper. And we did have pretty good speed. We could run up to about almost 40 miles an hour in land terms as to our top speed. But it was in Japan, so transported to Yokohama, Japan, and from there took a over Japan train ride of 3 days and 2 nights. One of the interesting aspects of that was that we went through Hiroshima, which was still pretty much flattened from the atomic bomb dropped on that. Got into Sasebo. My ship was in a dry dock in the yard there. It had been hit by gunfire over in Korea. It was being patched up. And when that was done, we went back to Korea, run around over there, shot at a few people, swept a few mines, headed back to the States, went through shipyard overhaul, went back over to Korea. And while there, the French were being kicked out of what is now Vietnam. And so we went south to lend some support. Well, we didn't get there in time for whatever reason. But anyway, why this put us down in the Philippines, we were out in Manila Bay, and there were Japanese warships that were sitting on the bottom of Manila Bay with the masts sticking out of the top of the water. They said, no swimming allowed because of the pollution in the bay due to the decomposition of the Japanese bodies on the ships. So that was an interesting thing. From there we went to Hong Kong, was there for 6 weeks, and then got orders to go back, come back to the States, well, Honolulu, and at that time, that was in early 1953, Hollywood was making a film of the Caine Mutiny, which is a book, a movie, and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, our ship was the ship that was used for all the wartime shots that was made there. Interesting people there. Humphrey Bogart, Fred McMurray. Humphrey Bogart, you couldn't even get close to. I mean, he was so aloof. I mean, it was like he was on a different planet. And Fred McMurray was kind of a standoffish guy. He did, you know, I don't think he really appreciated relationship with the crew. Van Johnson was like an old shoe. He was the friendliest guy you can imagine, but extremely homely. Believe it or not, this man was so freckled, and at that time, Hollywood had a contract with Max Factor Cosmetics, and they used this cream or whatever on the faces, and it was acidic or something, and it would eat holes in your skin. So they had all these big pock marks on their skin from being covered up with this makeup. But one of the most interesting fellows in that whole group was Lee Marvin. This guy was unbelievable. Friendly as you could be. Claude Akins was also his partner in that, but Lee Marvin was the type of a guy that he'd work all day on board ship. You know, we'd go out like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning and get back around 4:30 in the afternoon. He would go to his hotel, change clothes, go out and party and drink all night until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, come back to the hotel, crash for a couple of hours, 7 o'clock the next morning, he's on board ship, going through the whole thing all over, every day, same. I don't know what kept the man alive.
Wasn't he a Marine?
He was in his younger days, yeah.
Okay.
So that, he's just carrying on.
A lot of sailors I know, when we hit ports, you know, it was, where's the nearest bar?
Yeah.
They drink them out of alcohol, okay, let's go. You have duty the next day.
I would be willing to bet if you'd taken a blood sample of Lee Marvin and come out alcohol. But anyway, after that, we came back to Long Beach, California, and then we were assigned to go to the East Coast. Well, I wasn't really happy about going to the East Coast, so we were allowed to make swaps if we could find somebody of equal rank on another ship that wanted to go and was willing to exchange, and I did that. I got on another minesweeper, a little bit smaller. Made one more trip back to Japan and Korea. By then we came back to the States, and it was the fall of '54. And 6 months later, I was discharged.
So some of the people that you were with, either in boot camp or who you were stationed with, can you talk a little bit about some of the people that you met, or do you still keep in contact with them, or did you after you got back?
I've just had some contact with a couple, but nothing in the last 15 years, I guess. And I'm sure that one was a sergeant that he's not living anymore. I don't know about the other fellow, but last couple of times I tried to contact him, the phone number I had was not available anymore, so I don't know. That's about it for me.
Well, I had a good friend on board ship on the Doyle, and later on the Dexterous. We both transferred. Richard Bird, I knew him, his wife, and his 3 kids. We remained in contact and friendship for the remainder of their lives. Both Richard and Doris have since passed away about 6, 7 years ago.
Of all the people I met in Lincoln when I first got there, there's 2 guys that took me under their wing and taught me the B-47. And they're still alive in Lincoln, in Omaha, and we get together about once every 2 or 3 months. There's about, I think there's 3 or 4 maintenance men, a colonel that flew the airplanes, and some electricians, and security guard guys. It was all back in 56, when I went to Lincoln the first time. We're all still alive, and we still get together.
My boyfriend I met in A school, and then I didn't make the best decisions as a kid. Just, some people still consider me a kid, but it's alright. So I still keep in touch with my first husband because I have 2 children by him. He's a submariner, nuclear technician. And at one point I did get married again, but that was solely because I was about to deploy and my ex stated he couldn't take care of my children and my family was unwilling, so it was somebody I was on the ship with. So we got married because we knew he would get sent off the ship, and then that way him and his mom, he got to go to shore duty, were able to take care of my girls while I deployed. We're divorced now. I still keep in touch with pretty much like everybody, people that worked for me. I talked to a lot. I had one girl, she lived with me for a little bit when she was getting on her feet because she had a bad situation, and we each have sons that were born on the same day, which is pretty funny. But it's nice, like a lot of my friends are still active duty. I'm not gonna lie, I miss it sometimes. I wanted to do 20, but I got medically retired, so.
Only one I keep in touch with is the one I brought home.
I have no idea where the ones I was in the Army with, whether it was basic or anything, nothing.
I had an interesting guy in basic training. His name was Andrew Jackson. Really tall, lanky, black kid from Chicago. And it's just like he just kind of went with the flow. About halfway through basic training, like, I'm done. And one of the sergeants dropped him for push-ups. He just dropped down to one knee and said no. And we were all standing there with our jaw hanging down, like, don't talk to them like that. And they ended up kicking him out. Like, he's had enough. Oh, yeah.
Always threatening to set you back. And if you were a little bit too heavy or something, you couldn't do all the physical things, they would set you back, but there was a big thing. You didn't want to sit back and,
This kid was just lazy.
yeah, cause you didn't wanna go another week or 2 or 3 weeks and I was gonna get married when I got out of basic or down the road away, so I didn't wanna get sit back. I had plans coming up, but, and I didn't keep it like back here. I've tried to get hold of some of my buddies back there, but I can't get a hold of them, or they aren't home, or I can't find them. I wish I could, but when you're over there overseas, your buddies were your family then. I mean, you were really close to them, but then after I left that year, boom, nothing, not a thing. I didn't do anything with them. I wished I would've did more, yeah.
Kind of different when you're in the military because
Yeah.
you spend, say, 3 years at a place, you know, when you get there, you make friends with some people, and then maybe 6 months later, you're transferred
Yeah.
somewhere else, new people come in. So it's constant turnover. I mean, there's always somebody leaving, somebody coming in.
Well, I think the computer age now helps people
Help,
keep
would
in
it
touch.
would help, yeah.
But I mean, I was in way before that. We got one 20-minute phone call to the States a month, and it cost us $100 out of our pocket to do it.
Yeah.
And with women, they get married, their name changes. It's really hard to keep track of people, but I do on Facebook. And one good thing about Facebook is I did get in touch with one of my roommates from Germany, and being a Nebraska girl who going to Lincoln was like a big trip when I was growing up. Meeting all these people from different states. I mean, I could not fathom never driving a vehicle, but we had some people from New York that were in my platoon, and they had never driven a vehicle, and I just could not picture that. And I used to get my hometown paper, and there was a branding on the paper where they were doing a branding, and these gals from New York were all just aghast that we were putting an iron on this poor little cow and all this stuff. And I said, well, have you ever had Rocky Mountain oysters? Oh, yeah, we just love that. And I said, well, I couldn't tell you where those come from. They could not believe me.
Where it come?
So how about life outside of the military now? So when did you get out of the military, and then what was life? What did you do then after that?
Well, I got out in 1965, came home on a troop ship, which was not a pleasant ride, and came back to the farm, and the farm then for about 4 years, and then I met my wife, and we were married, and we just celebrated our 50th anniversary last Friday.
What was life like after you got out?
I was over in Thailand at an Air Force base. They were doing this cooking. And anyway, I got out in October of '67. And I came home and started working on the farm in Iowa. And then 3 years later, I moved back here to Nebraska, and I've been here ever since farming.
I came back from Vietnam in February of '69 and discharged from California someplace.
What did you do after you got out?
What did I do after I got out? Well, I went to over to Hastings to go to school in electronics, and with my clearance, kind of finished school. The FBI was needing technicians and monitoring and stuff like that, and guys like me were being hired all the time out there. So that's what I thought I was going to do. Well, I bought a new Mach 1, and a girl come along, and one thing led to another. We got married, and then I ended up dropping out of school and going to work. And I always wished I could finish that school, and wonder where I would have ended up then. I've come and gone since then, job here, job there. I get tired of one, just leave it, get better on the next day, so I've just been liking it.
I was looking for a job when I found that.
No big deal.
I got out of the military about a month before 9/11 and worked in Nebraska for a couple of years and then moved to the Chicago area. My wife, 2 kids, and we're there for 10 years. Moved back with the same wife, 2 more kids. Some of you know a couple of them. But moved back here about 7 years ago and started farming with that fellow over there. So he hasn't gotten rid of me yet, so.
Well, I flew out of Germany 8 months pregnant. On the very last day, they would let me fly on an airplane. And ended up in Arthur, Nebraska, which is my hometown. And eventually ended up in Oberlin, Kansas as a respiratory therapist.
Did you come out on that same flight, or?
Same flight?
Yeah, I went back and forth several times. I got out a year before Cheryl did. We just got married a month and a couple of weeks, about 6 weeks before I got out. So I got out in April of '87. Came back to the States to out process, spent 2-3 weeks at home with my family, and then went back to Germany and spent another year there while Cheryl was still in the military. Drove a courier route delivering deposits and paperwork and stuff for the morale support, which was like the enlisted club and officers clubs and stuff that the military had around Frankfurt area in Germany. We came back to Nebraska, which I had never seen in my life. Walked out and said, look at all the trees. We lived in Arthur for about 3 months, and I told Cheryl, I said, I think I need to start looking for a job, because we had planned on going back to Georgia, where I'm from. And we've been here ever since. I've worked construction, electrician, got on the Postal Service back in 1990.
Ellen Spellmaker, McDonald, Jericho Stack,
Transferred to Grand
Jacob
Island
Siebel,
and into
and
Aurora.
Lydia Towns. Please stop by the
The
office.
rest is history.
I got that out of the service in the 1st of July of 1975 after 20 years. And I come back here to Aurora, where my wife was from. I met her when I was in Lincoln. And I went to work for Wheeler's Farm Supply, if anybody ever remembers it.
Yes, yes. I
There
do.
for about, maybe a year and a half or so. And they wanted me to take a job in Geneva as assistant manager down there. I moved it up. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay here. I've had enough home. And anyway, after that, I went out to the George Farms out there for a year or so, 2 years with Mr. George, got sick, helped milk cows. And then in '80, I went to John Deere, 20 years there at John Deere, setting up farm equipment. And after that, I got out of there at 80 and maybe done a little lawn mowing for the city parks after that. And I quit that about 4 or 5 years ago, more, because I can't see or hear anymore. Jet engines got to me.
I got out April 29th, 2017. There's a few contributing factors, but 2 weeks before I found out that they were gonna start processing me medically, I had gotten accepted to what they call the LDO program. I was gonna be an officer, but stuff happens, and I got retired. I don't like the label, but I have it for PTSD. We stayed in Virginia for a little while until my kids finished school for that school year, and then we drove out here. My boyfriend's from here, and that was like August of 17. And then I, did the whole stay-at-home thing for a little while, and I needed to adult. I love my babies, but baby shark, only so much. They go a little nuts. So I got a job. I work in the service department at Hamilton. And I started at the end of September last year.
I got out of active duty in April of 2001 and started law school about a month later in May. weird because it was like I was in high school again. They had lockers and everything, and it was just a very bizarre experience.
Okay, I got out in December of 1972, and that's also the month that my first daughter was born too, December 1972. So she was actually would have been paid for if I would have stayed in a little bit longer, but all the free stuff was paid for. But after I got out, she was born in Fremont, and actually back in 1972, it didn't cost too much to have a first child. My first child was only, they asked me how I was going to pay for it, and I said, it's going to be cash. Her bill was $300 in 1972, and it went our next child, I think, was up from there. Was my second daughter was $1,500. That was 5 years later, so that's how much it went up in the 70s. But anyway, going on from there, after the service, I moved here. So I've been here all the time. Our present house, 1972, we moved to a brand new house on Mark Street. And I started out working for Fred Hyde in Hampton for a while as a carpenter. And then I went over to Bonavella for 10 years. And then I got in the post office in 1982, and I worked the post office from 1982 until 2006. And part of that time I was here at Aurora for 4 years, last 4. So I worked with Bruce for 4 years. So then after I retired, I've been working at Stewart Museum as a carpenter man, my dream job in the summertime, and do that. So I keep busy. And I also did celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary 2 weeks ago, 23rd of March. So
I got out of the Navy in June of 1955. Knocked around a bit on a few odds and ends jobs. One was at the Union Pacific Railroad. Then they had a layoff, so that left me out on something else. Worked in a poultry processing plant for a few weeks, and that was too long. Eventually, about a year and a half after discharge, I got a job with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office as a deputy sheriff. I worked traffic for a couple of years, and then a permanent appointment opened up at what was then Rocky Butte Jail, and I took that. I was there for 10 years. Met a lot of interesting people, and due to the politics that was going on, I decided that my future was not with the county sheriff's office, and I went into retail sales. That didn't work out real well. Then I went into metal fabrication and construction, worked that for a number of years. Ended up working for an outfit called Precision Cast Parts, which is now owned by Warren Buffett. And if any of you have ever flown in a jet airplane, we were there with you. And I retired from them in 94, and traveled around a bit. In Oregon City, they have one of the only municipal elevators in the United States, and I worked there part-time for 4 years, which was interesting. And eventually we decided to move from Oregon to Wyoming. And then we ended up in California for a couple of months, well, 6 months. And then Rapid City, South Dakota, and then here. And I've been here since